Welcome to Learn at Work podcast, which is sponsored by iOS Press, the publisher of Work, a journal of prevention, assessment, and rehabilitation. We're delighted to host this podcast that will bring together insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions on topics that matter most in the realm of health, rehabilitation, work, prevention, and assessment. What can you expect from our podcast? We'll have expert interviews, individuals who have published in the journal, and we'll dive into conversations with leaders who have shared their valuable experience and expertise. You'll learn about different latest work trends, technology, and best practices. I'm Karen Jacobs, the founding editor of Work, and I'm the moderator of these podcasts. Welcome to this episode of Learn at Work, a podcast for the journal Work. I am so excited that in this virtual podcast studio, I actually have the guest next to me. Nancy MacRae has been part of the Work Journal since it started in 1990 and happens to be in the Boston area visiting with me. And she has agreed to talk about her experience being on the editorial board of Work, also about her career as well. So, Nancy, welcome. And I'd love you to start to talk just about your career in general. And you've done so many things way before you came into being the editorial, a member of the editorial board. You've been in politics, you've been a professor. So just take us back in time.
Well, I really have gone through the lifespan in terms of my work experience. Started off at a developmental center in New Hampshire, and then, due to a divorce, moved up to up to the Portland, Maine area, and was working with people with cognitive delays. We called it mental retardation then. Now it's seen as a nasty term, but that was spoken with respect at that point. And I was out in the community visiting homes, doing evaluations. And shortly thereafter, I joined a group that was dealing with the population that I just spoke about, um, and went to Pineland Center, which was built out in the country when people did not want the population I'm talking about to be near them. Now the city has sprawled out, but it's a beautiful location. And when I joined to become what they called chief of occupational therapy, there were about 1,500 residents. They had just discharged many of them out into the community with not really the proper supports. So when I joined, we were under a consent decree to have things be more individualized and more appropriate for that population. I was very excited to have 5 different programs, starting with the lowest level and the most physically involved, all the way up to work preparation, and then started a program for retired folks. And it was it was a lot of hard work, particularly getting the staff to realize that they needed to assist but not do for these people, because certainly with repetition and with clarity, this population was able to accomplish a great deal. I was very proud that Pineland was found one of the first in the nation to become compliant under a court order. It is now closed, and before I ended my tenure there, I started work on a graduate degree with an emphasis on adult learning and gerontology.
And so you went to school to be an OT first. And where was that, Nancy?
Oh, it was the University of New Hampshire.
Okay.
And that's when they were still giving bachelor degrees, the BSOT. They no longer do that. It has to be a graduate degree. And that prepared me very well. While I was still at Pineland, I became the president of the Maine OT Association. And that's how Karen and I met. And we also were very friendly with a president of New Hampshire. And the three of us, after our tenures ended, still continued to meet on probably a monthly, every 6 week basis. And that's how I became familiar and dear friends with Karen. And those of you who know her know that you can't say no to her.
Oh,
So
thank you.
she has been pressuring me to do this for some time.
Right. Well, I have to say, you were on the board for work when I was just thinking about it and then proposed it. So I'm so grateful. But your career has been really remarkable on all you've accomplished. And when you started being a professor at University of New England, you taught for many years there. And where is the sequence of you being active more politically?
Well, that occurred when I was still married and in New Hampshire. And one of the House representatives had died, and they needed to fill his spot. And some Democratic committee members came and asked if I would be willing to run. And I thought about it and said, yes, I would be willing to run. And I had a great deal of support for them. So here is this mid-30s young woman on her bike visiting the district that she was going to represent. It was a real learning experience. And I finished out that term. My marriage eroded, and I left and still got votes, even though I had declared I wasn't going to win. But I decided that being in the House was a little too much for me in terms of having to bow down to those that had been there for longer. But it was an interesting experience. I went to UNE and was there for 27 years and on two different campuses. UNE started out and took over St. Joseph's College in Biddeford, Maine, which is very close to Kennebunk, for those of you who don't know where it is. And we eventually moved up to the Portland campus, where that campus is now known as a health center. OT, PT, nursing, PAs, social work. Now we have a pharmacy college, a dental college, and the College of Osteopathic Medicine is now finally moving up from Biddeford to Portland, where we're near more hospitals and more areas that we can contribute to the community. I loved teaching. I became director of the OT department, and the dean at that point said, "Nancy, you have to stop teaching as much." And I said, "Well, then you'll have to find a new director because I want to teach and remain close to the students." So I did that, um, and left 7 years ago. I had a phased in retirement and left about 7 years ago, and I miss the students, but I'm very glad I did it when I did, particularly prior to COVID.
Yes. And, I like that you did a transition from being in academia, but you're still in academia, but with a different population of
Oh yes, yes, I am. This brings a smile to my face and feeds my soul. I'm volunteering in a school that's probably a mile from my house in the second grade, and I went there wanting to help with reading and writing. And I'm now trying to learn new math, which has been wonderful for me. And I wish they'd had new math when I was trying to learn math. It's a lot of fun. The students are terrific. What they're doing in terms of new math and in terms of writing their own chapter books on an iPad is just has flabbergasted me. And I just love the second graders, and the teacher that I'm with is just exceptional. So I do that one morning a week, and I look forward to it, and I miss it in the summer.
Oh, well, it's great that, you've shifted from this paid work to volunteer work. And I'm using the word work purposefully because in your retirement, you continue to be on the editorial board and an incredibly valued member of our board for, at this point in time, 34 years.
Exactly. Well, and Karen and I have not only professionally been involved, but we've traveled together. We've also written together, and we co-edited a large OT text. So we've done a lot of things together.
Well, I'm grateful that in your retirement that you're continuing on the board of work. And, I grabbed an issue of work before we sat down to do this podcast in Boston because you're visiting with me. And it was exciting to pick up an issue from what year was it, Nancy?
94.
1994, that Nancy wrote about women at work. And one thing that we're very proud of with the Work Journal is we've broken the glass ceiling of gender on editorial boards. We have more women on the editorial board of Work, and I don't know of other journals that have that kind of statistic. So, Nancy, I'd love to just ask you, what has it been like to be on the editorial board of Work? And besides our friendship, what keeps you going?
Well, I find it very interesting, particularly now where we're getting more international submissions. When I first started, the few international submissions would probably drive me to pull my hair out because the authors were using English as a second or third language, but the quality has improved, and I learned so much from the different countries that are sending in these texts.
Yes, and you're a really diligent reviewer. In fact, you love catching mistakes in grammar
Oh, I
in
love it.
particular, which
Unfortunately, I love it.
which is good for the authors because one of the things that we pride ourselves with the journal, and this is part of the ethos of the journal, is that we are an author-friendly journal, and
Exactly.
yeah, and we want to help the authors, and so we try to give meaningful, constructive feedback in a kind manner. And so when you find something, you provide that feedback so that the author can learn from it and grow.
And I've been very impressed by that, that we're not just saying, nope, you can't be in the journal. And I have done been the reviewer on some articles that have gone 3 rounds of review, but the authors were very determined to make it better. And in fact, the comments, not only mine but other reviewers, have strengthened the article. And I'm very proud of that
Yeah.
too.
And I thank you because when you review an article, and any author who's listening here knows that it's a long, arduous process, and it's not something that happens quickly. But Nancy really has the record for reviewing in a timely manner so that we can give authors feedback, so that they can make revisions as quickly as possible so that we can get it published. We publish once a month, and I encourage people to submit to work. Again, your focus needs to somehow be on the topic of work, but to know that we have your best interest in mind when papers are submitted. We really want to provide evidence-based, thoughtful feedback to authors. So, Nancy, um, work is again in its 34th year. Is there anything that you had in mind? And in fact, we worked on something together while you were here to help with encouraging people to submit more case studies and the review process for those. Anything you can think of in the future that, um, you'd love to see the journal doing? We have the podcast. Is there something else you're thinking?
Well, I would encourage people to do more case studies because that doesn't require a very strict research protocol. But I would love to see more of those because I find them very interesting. I happen to like the qualitative data that's collected with research projects. Um,
And that's probably a really wonderful way of us concluding this podcast.
yes,
Encouraging people to think about case reports. And that's important for our readers and authors who are in clinical practice. I think we can learn so much from single case studies. And we encourage you to follow our authors' guidelines for that. Um, Nancy, thank you
you're
for
welcome.
for being on this episode of Learn at Work. And everyone, if you'd like to learn more about the journal, please go to our website, which is workjournal.org. Thank you for listening to Learn at Work.